The Switch 2 turns 1 year old this week, and it's been a very divisive first year for the system. So let me just start off by saying I love the Switch 2. It has a bigger and better screen, improved Joy-Cons, a few of the exclusives are really great, the performance boost for some games, the third-party support we've gotten so far, but there are a lot of very real issues with the system, some of which have gotten worse or haven't changed. And let me also just say, every time I make a video going over issues with a game, some people who even agree with me call it a hate video, but I don't consider this to be a Switch 2 hate video. I just have problems with the console I hope can be remedied or lessened in the future, and speaking out against these is the only way to call for change. Anyway, the first one I want to talk about is Switch 2 Edition game pricing, and I've been very vocally against this. Now, Switch 2 editions in theory are fine. You get better visuals, better performance, some extra features for original Switch games, but the issue is that these are full-price games after years of being out. Breath of the Wild, for example, was 8 years old at the Switch 2 launch, and the Switch 2 edition sells for $70. The game was $60 8 years ago and hasn't dropped in price, and now they're charging more for a slightly better version. I know the upgrade is free with NSO, but it just kind of rubs me the wrong way how a game that is nearly a decade old now costs more than when it first came out now. Not only that, but it doesn't even come with a DLC. Like, if this game was $60 for the Switch 2 edition and DLC included, like, I can understand that, but you just can't get mad when Nintendo gets called out for this. And then there's others that are $80 like Mario Wonder, Mario Party Jamboree, and Kirby in the Forgotten Land. And they at least have real edition modes as well, but come on, $80 for Mario Party, especially when this game's a couple years old now. Lastly, there's a couple $5 upgrades like for Animal Crossing New Horizons and Xenoblade Chronicles X, which actually have a lot of issues. It also doesn't make sense why games like Odyssey got a free performance boost, but then others like Xenoblade Chronicles X are behind paywalls. I also just want to say, if you want to stay up to date on Nintendo news and just hear my thoughts on other Nintendo topics, be sure to subscribe. Next issue I want to talk about is the obvious one, game keycards. So this has continued to be an issue for pretty much the Switch 2's entire life so far. It's basically a download code, except you have to actually put the cartridge in, and you actually can sell it if you want. And I think these are better than digital games as someone who likes to buy physical games, because you at least get the physical game. If you want to sell it, you can. You get to put the game on your shelf. But if you're someone who doesn't sell your games and you don't care about displaying games on your shelf, there's really no reason to get this at all. Like, it's pretty much just to get a physical version of the game, but there's literally nothing on the cartridge. It is literally just a key to download the game to your console, and then you still have to put the cartridge in. And I think this is a very big issue. I don't like the future of gaming where you'll own nothing like it, because this requires an internet access. If you don't have internet access, you cannot download the game. So it pretty much makes the cartridge just a piece of plastic. So in some cases, I understand why. Like, the Switch 2 cartridge, I believe, only goes up to 64 gigs, and there's games that are bigger than 64 gigs. But is there no way to have data on the cartridge and then require a download? Like, still, you would need an internet connection, but another big issue is the storage, which I'll get to later. And it's not even like it's keeping prices down, because they are cheaper to produce than normal Switch 2 cartridges. And if we were actually seeing games be cheaper because of this, then you could say, well, at least the games are cheaper, but that's not the case, because a lot of the games using game keycards are still full-price $70 games. To Nintendo's credit, they have not made any game keycards except Pokemon Pokopia, but that's more Game Freak. All of Nintendo's games themselves besides that have been on the game card, so that's good at least. Also, I've seen a lot of people ask why some small games like Pokemon Pokopia are on game keycards, and it is so it's cheaper for them to make. It's not about the storage, because Pokopia is not a big game, so it pretty much is greed, because this is a $70 game. Like, it is not a cheaper game. So you're paying full price, and they're reaping all the benefits of it. So I think that is something that deserves to be called out. And that's not Nintendo directly again. Those are the Pokemon Company and Game Freak. But still, this is a huge issue, and it is an issue on other consoles. Like, Xbox has done it, PlayStation has done it, but it's definitely a lot worse here. Also, download codes, which is when you just buy the case and it's literally just the download code, that is far worse than this, and Bethesda's done it for a couple of games. But this luckily isn't super common. Like, I can only really think of a couple on Switch 2 that are like this. Now, the next issue I want to talk about is another big topic, which is the price of certain games. So some people think that every single game is overpriced on Switch 2, but I don't agree with that. I felt like DK Bonanza was worth it, for example, but something like Mario Tennis Fever for $70, you just can't convince me that's a $70 game, and it seems like Nintendo couldn't convince a lot of people of that either, because the sales numbers seem to be lower than expected. And now it actually seems like change actually might be happening, because Splatoon Raiders, Star Fox, and Yoshi and the Mysterious Book are all below $70 when there was not a single Switch 2 retail release from Nintendo before this month that was below $70. So two of these are $60 physically, $50 digitally, and then Yoshi is $60 digitally, $70 physically. But you could also pre-order the games to get them $10 cheaper, although that's not directly through Nintendo. I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo knew about that and was supportive of it though. Like, this has clearly been an issue, because we've seen a lot of Switch 2 games drop in price or go on big sales, like Kirby Air Riders, Metroid Prime 4, even Pokemon Legends ZA. Like, they've been as low as $30, so clearly sales numbers are lower than expected. Doesn't mean they're flops, but for a price of a Nintendo game to be less than half well before a year after release, like, there has to be something going on. It's looking like Nintendo may have learned their lesson and is lowering prices for games, but we'll have to see. Also, Mario Kart World for $80 deserved all the pushback it got, because even though you can get it technically for $50 with the Switch 2 bundle, having it as $80 on its own just got a ton of bad PR, and the game is just not worth $80, at least in my opinion. So I actually don't have much of an issue with the price of the console at $450 base and $500 for the bundle. Now, raising it to $550, I do have a little more of a problem with that, but at the same time, I do want to be fair and call out Sony, Microsoft, and now Valve have been more egregious, raising older systems significantly more. Like the Steam Deck going up by like $200, $300 when it's not like they're upgrading it. Like that is something that is far worse than the Switch 2 going up in $50. But again, I think anytime a price is raised, whether you think it's justified or not, like we at least have to question it, and they have to be open for pushback on it. Now, one of the biggest issues for me is kind of the lack of big games. So to be clear, I'm not saying the Switch 2 has no games. I'm not saying that they don't have any good games. But the biggest exclusives in the first year are DK Bonanza and Mario Kart World, and both came out at launch and 3 months after, respectively. Since then, we've gotten Switch 2 exclusives like Pokopia, Mario Tennis Fever, Hyrule Warriors, Kirby Air Riders, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, and unless I'm forgetting any. They're all solid games and better than the exclusives of the competitors, since like they barely have true exclusives now. But I at least like to know we're getting something like the Ocarina of Time remake, a new Mario RPG, a new 3D Mario, which has been talked about for so long now. Maybe a completely brand new single-player campaign IP, a new Smash, a new Luigi's Mansion, a new Pikmin, a new Animal Crossing, even though it's probably not happening for a while because of the Switch 2 edition. And this is all subjective, since maybe you consider something like Kirby Air Riders to be the big Switch 2 game for you. Like, for me, I love Mario RPGs, even though some people might not classify those as big games, but what can I say, I'm biased. I'm still happy we're getting regular games, but Nintendo hasn't done themselves any favors just drip-feeding news of games rather than giving directs to showcase more of the year. Because let's say they had a direct earlier this year and showed a new Luigi's Mansion, the Zelda Ocarina of Time remake, a couple other big games. People would stop questioning where the games are, or where the big games are, I should say. And it's been a common complaint, and a lot of people have also pushed back on that complaint and said, no, the Switch 2 has games, you just don't like them, you only like Mario and Zelda. And I think that's just a very condescending way to respond to people. I think it depends how someone says it. If they say the Switch 2 has no games, then you could question them more. But even as someone who plays a lot of different Nintendo series, there really hasn't been that many Switch 2 games from Nintendo that I've been that interested in. Like, I really love DK Bonanza. Mario Kart World, I think, is a fun game, even though it's overpriced. I have Age of Imprisonment. Kirby Air Riders and Pokemon Pokopia are fun games. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, which I haven't played yet, has gotten good reviews. And then there's a couple games that are also on Switch and Switch 2, like Metroid Prime 4. But I think it's completely understandable to just kind of want more system sellers. Like, if you're someone who's not a big Nintendo fan and you're thinking about getting the Switch 2, I don't even know if I can really recommend it that much, just because I don't think it has the library yet to justify that. Now, I could say that if you can find it on sale, like, for $400, which it actually has been on sale for $400 before, then definitely for that price. But now for $500 for the price it's going up to, that's just a hard sell when the game is really still building its library. Like, if you're a big Nintendo fan, then yeah, I think that this is worth it. But there are a lot of people who want a new Mario game, who want a new Zelda game, who are waiting for the new Pokemon generation to come out. People who might want a new Animal Crossing or Smash or whatever it might be. And I don't think these people are wrong for feeling that way. If that's how they feel, that they don't want to buy the Switch 2 until one of those games is on it, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, for me, I've played a few Switch 2 games, but a lot of what I've been playing on it has been original Switch games. Now, it is starting to get better. It seems like we're going to get a new Fire Emblem, which is not really my favorite series, but a lot of people do love it, so I'm happy that they're getting a new entry on Switch 2. There's going to be the new Pokemon games next year. There's going to be Star Fox game on Switch 2 next month. There's going to be Splatoon Raiders. So we're getting more and more, like, medium-sized games, I'd say. Like Fire Emblem, like, I don't want to call it like one of their huge games because it still is fairly niche, but it sells well. It is a very popular series. So I'd say it's like the mid to high tier of games for them. And stuff like Star Fox, stuff like Splatoon Raiders, Yoshi. Like, these are sizable games. Like, these series have fan bases, but they're not your Mario, Zelda, mainline Pokemon, Animal Crossing, Smash. And I'm sure we'll get games in those series on Switch 2 soon enough, so not panicking about that or anything. But I do hope we see at least a couple of these in like the next year or so. And finally, I want to talk about the storage. So on one hand, you could say it's a good thing that its storage is only 256 gigs because that keeps the price down. But on the other hand, it fills up really quick, and 256 gigs of storage is just not enough in 2026. Also, the micro SDs are just really expensive. I've actually never had to get extra storage for a Nintendo console before, since like the 3DS, I think, were still fairly cheap. Like, remember, you could get like a 4GB card and get like a bunch of games on it. I rarely buy digital games that take up much storage, since I almost always buy physical when it's an option. But the Switch 2, you could literally have your storage depleted after you download 3 games, maybe even less. It wouldn't be an issue for me without game key cards, at least if it had some data on the cartridge, but it doesn't. This isn't like a deal breaker for me or anything. It's not my biggest gripe with the Switch 2, because Like I said, I mostly buy physical games anyway, but I'm sure we'll probably see a Switch 2 edition that has more storage, especially if storage space eventually goes down in price, because right now it's just rising along with the cost of RAM. Anyway, those are just some of the issues I have with the Switch 2. Like I said, I really do like this console, and I'm going to make a video talking about some of the best parts of it for the first year, but I also really want the Switch 2 to be as best it can. Like, I want Nintendo to improve this console. I want them to just do better. And I feel like a lot of people, like, they get so attached to the Switch 2 and to Nintendo that they perceive any criticisms as hate, and I just don't think that's a good way to go about it. I think as long as someone is criticizing the console and Nintendo in good faith, that there's no issue. That, like, for me, I want this console to succeed, I want it to have great games, and I want prices to be fair, and it seems like people have been voting with their wallets, people have been vocal about it, and there may have been change with some of these prices going down. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the Switch 2. What are your problems with it? Do you like it? And be sure to subscribe for when I make my video going over the best things about the Switch 2 in the first year. I'll see you next time.